starting this video with a cat on my lap. So, yeah, last time I said I might be done, I might not with NemeSeptember. Clearly, I am not done, because now we're taking a look at Iron Factory's Nightmare Commander. This is their black repaint version of Commander, I think, was just the regular figure. And this is an interesting double homage of a Legends scale figure. It's also one of Iron Factory's older offerings, so it's both simpler than the kind of stuff that you get with them now, and also, well, simpler in terms of engineering and articulation too. It's fine. Now, yeah, this is, I don't dislike this figure or anything like that, but it's also what I would say it's probably not my favorite Nemesis that I have, which, you know, that's fine, but I don't regret getting it, but I'm also not like, oh man, I'm glad I got it when I did. It's kind of like, but we need to start actually talking about the figure. Okay, so as you can see right now, whoops, right now this is a, Astrid, please. This is a kind of a mess. You've got the kind of smallish truck cab or just truck Optimus, or Nemesis in this case, in the front here, and then it's kind of a visual mess until you get to the trailer in the back. And that is because, if you're unfamiliar with this figure, the trailer is part of that secondary homage. The cab is sort of the main first stage of it, and then the trailer is a separate thing. Also, there are some accessories that I do not currently have on the trailer here. It's because there's really no good place to store them. But they are off to the side. We will see them when we get into the robot mode. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. She's just purring away on my lap. Okay, so yeah, messy trailer. It's a visual mess. I think this works okay. Like I've said in the past with Nemesis figures, the fact that it's primarily black and also this like dark gray in this case works in the figure's favor, because as messy as everything is, the cohesive color scheme makes it a little less visually busy. It's still a mess. It's still very much a mess, but I feel like this would be a lot more visually confusing if it was in red and blue and gray, or even just red and blue. So here it's like all the colors blend together a little bit better, so when you've got all of these different panels and stuff, they, you don't really necessarily read them as separate components. But again, just the overall design of this thing is still pretty messy. But, you get some nice hits of paint here and there, like the silver on the rims, which you get to see a whole bunch of them going along the side there. It's 10 in total, because you got the trailer on there as well. The nice metallic red for the windscreen, which doesn't really need to be there on the Cybertronian vehicle mode, but whatever. Silver for the smokestacks, some silver and gunmetal around the front here, as well as some more metallic red for the lights. And yeah, it's a busy vehicle mode, even without the trailer, which we'll do size comparisons first, then we'll take off the trailer and look at the vehicle mode proper. So let's get all of that junk back here. I'm trying to do all of this around a cat. This is not easy. Bring in our continuing to become more and more discolored buzzworthy Dinobot. I mean, at this point, I suppose if he discolors enough, at least it's uniform. And then Bova Prime and Samus. So yeah, it's an Iron Factory figure, Legend scale. So he's not huge, yet he looks very bulky. Oh, Astrid, careful! Do not. If you jaw the camera and stop recording, I'm going to be very cross with you. And then, what did I just say? And here is Nightmare Commander with legacy burnouts. And I think mass-wise, it's, roughly deluxe-ish. Roughly. Just in terms of apparent mass, I guess. Oh boy. I did not anticipate having a cat on my lap, so reaching either size comparisons is proving to be a little difficult. So Here he is with, there we go, Cat has left. So here he is with core Nemesis Prime. And this will make more sense, or this will be more apt when we get the trailer off here. But there's core Nemesis Prime and then Siege Nemesis Prime. So there's all of that. And finally, here is Nightmare Commander with the duck tank. Okay, all I'm going to do right now is take the trailer off. But before I do that, if you like this video, blah, 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 Coffee, Patreon, links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, you could always support the channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, typical YouTube algorithm stuff. Now, taking this thing off, very easy. I didn't peg it in all the way because it's a little bit tricky to get off with how everything connects, but basically the way it works is there are 2 pegs that attach it. One here and one here. And they just peg into the side here, so I find what works best is to kind of give this a wiggle while pulling out, and that will dislodge the peg. And then once you get the one peg out, you can wiggle to dislodge the other one. And it's manageable. It's just when you have it pegged in all the way, it's a little bit more difficult to, there's a lot more twisting involved. So I just didn't peg it in all the way to make that part easier. Now this big old chunk will just go off to the side for now. And now we can look at the core trailer, and it is not much better than, or rather the core cab, and it is not much better than the trailer. It's still messy. It's less messy, but it is still messy. There's not a whole lot of really well-defined vehicle here. It's mostly just right up here, and everything else is just robot mess around the back. Taking off these cannons doesn't really help it at all. Like, it debulks it a little bit, but it still doesn't do much to help with the illusion of robotness. So yeah, it's not a good looking vehicle mode. It's fine, it gets the job done, and I'm not mad about it being inaccurate or anything like that, because I really don't care, for one, but also because, it's meant to be Cybertronian, it's meant to be more of like a fast travel mode. I get that. It just doesn't look very appealing to me. I believe this is based on the War Within design, but even from what I've seen, that the actual design for that vehicle looks better than this. This is just kind of messy, but it is what it is. And just like before, having like the black and the dark gray helps to have a lot of this stuff blend together visually better, which I think helps, but it's still not enough. You've got just it's so narrow in front and so wide in back, and it's just there's a lot of mess here. So there's that. And now size wise, without the trailer, you can see Nightmare Commander is there's about, I want to say, not necessarily 2/3 of the bulk, but definitely maybe 5/8 of the bulk is made up of that trailer. So there he is with the usual size comparisons. And then we'll bring in core Nemesis. And again, here the sizes are a little bit more on par with each other, though Nightmare Commander is still bigger, noticeably bigger than Nemesis Prime, because core class. But yeah, and then there's Siege Nemesis, definitely smaller without the trailer. And finally, here is Nightmare Commander without all of the added trailer bulk with the duck tank. All right, let's turn this into a robot, which is definitely where this whole thing shines the best. You can leave the cannon on the back here on. I'm going to try to do that. You can basically leave all of this stuff attached, but it's also usually easier to take it off. These little bits here are separate pieces, and you've just got arms hanging off the side without those pieces covering up the fists. So something to be aware of, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna attempt to transform this without taking any of these bits off. So First, going to unplug the arms from the side here. There's just a little pegs into the inside there. Untab that, or unpeg that from both sides. This little, I'm just going to swing these up a bit. This little platform that the cannon is pegged onto comes up. And I'm grabbing the platform rather than here, because if I grab here to try and move it, this is just going to pop off. So we're just going to do that. And then rotate the waist around 180 degrees, as is normal for these kinds of things. And to finish off the legs, just going to split the legs, extend them, and extend them. There we go. Hold out the toes, which are kind of tricky because you basically want to tilt the foot forward and try and hold the heel with one finger so that you can flip the toes forward. Otherwise, it might get caught. So same thing on this side. Just going to hold this with a finger in the back and then try and flip the toe forward so it doesn't get caught up in here. There we go. And then you want to slide these little knee pads up, and they kind of click into place right here. It's a little tenuous, and these are prone to popping off, but they do click into place. So there we've got legs, and I have it on good authority that he knows how to use them. Now we're going to rotate the elbow down, and kind of want to rotate the shoulder forward a bit. So rotate the elbow down, then rotate the bicep around 180 degrees, and this will swing around, and this tab here will kind of hook into this slot right above the front wheel, and that gives you an arm. Rotating the fists is tricky because these are very stiff, so for this one I'm just going to rotate the gun to get it out of the way so I have a better grip, but I'm going to rotate that and rotate that back. Again, this is just to show that you can leave these on during the transformation, but if you take them off, you don't have to worry about that particular bit. So again, straighten out the elbow, rotate the arm, bring this in and clip it into the wheel, and then just bring it out to get it kind of out of the way, and then put this out of the way so that can rotate the fist back down into place. There we go. And now the torso is the torso and the head are the trickiest parts, because basically what you want to do is you want to pull the front section of the cab forward, and you want to pull this back because it actually extends just a little bit, but it does extend. You can see right there where it's extended out. So you want to extend that out, swing this down, and the robot head will go into this little cavity here. So swing this around. This can also kind of swing back to get out of the way. Swing back the cockpit section or window section, and the easiest way I find to do this is to try and get like a pinky in here and push the head up while also pulling back on the window a little bit, so that way you can get the head platform out more, so it's much easier to pull out. So pull this out, rotate the head around 180 degrees, and then this comes down, and one problem with this is this can come down further than it's supposed to, which makes lining this up a little tricky, but basically you want to line that up and then push the head platform down. And from here, going to bring the arms out just a little bit more, because this other part's a little tricky too. So going to collapse this panel up against the back, and now we want to just squeeze down to get this piece here down so that the torso is pushed down into the midsection, and it's a little bit tricky to do. I'm just going to push and squeeze until it stops wanting to move, and I've yet to find a way to get this to go in so that it doesn't have a little bit of wiggle, but it's not too bad. And it's like, yeah, that head platform, I don't like how they did that for the head transformation, but whatever. So with all of that done, here we go. Here we have Nightmare Commander in his core robot mode. guns still attached to the back, guns still attached to the forearms, and it's a nifty little War Within styled Nemesis. It's just like some of this guy's construction is very like old Iron Factory, like before they were able to refine their craft a little bit, because it feels very not entirely thought out. Like the knee pads here, they don't, like I said, they don't, like, they click in, but they're also really easy to pop off. The joints feel kind of unnecessarily tight, especially for something this small. I'm not a huge fan, as I said, of the way that they handled the head, having it just like on this plank that doesn't really tab in or anything like that. It's just kind of loosely sitting on just over this void, like very loosely sitting. Like it does kind of, it basically what's happening is it's hitting these little ridges. There's very narrow ridges on the inside there, but it's also extremely easy if you push too hard to start pushing it past those ridges. So it doesn't stay up as much as I'd like. This doesn't really have a way to like properly line up. It's just a whole lot of irritations with how this is designed, but it does look cool. I like the color separation with, again, the black and the gray, but now you've got a lot more visible of this light blue in this case. It's like all spark blue almost, with a little bit of silver. Like the smokestacks are now in the front, which looks good, but you also have the midriff grille, which was just hidden on the underside of the vehicle, and then the front section of the cab is the actual chest. It's got the shoulder wheels, which look cool, and these, for what he is, he's relatively clean, but that's also, you know, the vehicle was kind of a mess. But this does look cool. I wouldn't be terribly upset if I had this as like just the standalone, like just a standalone figure and didn't have all of this other stuff with it, but I was able to get it with the other stuff, so that's fine. Of course, I also wouldn't have been super thrilled to pay what I paid for this whole thing if I didn't also get this. But, you know, for a little Legends scale, bulky Nemesis Prime, repaint of War Within Prime, I think this is, the robot is neat, barring a few design irritations. Now, the head is very tiny, but it does look the part of a mean-looking Nemesis Prime. I think this is the same head that they used for the regular version, just in black with the red eyes. But as tends to be the case with a lot of these things, the head sculpt seems to fit Nemesis better. So there is that. But yeah, it's a nice sculpt. Kind of basic in terms of paint. It's kind of what you see with a lot of Nemesis repaints, where it's the silver faceplate, red eyes, black helmet. That's kind of it. But also for the scale, I feel like that's all you really need in terms of paint on the head. Now for articulation, the head is on a ball joint, but it's very restricted because of how this all comes together, and also the joint is very tight. So like you can kind of get tilt, but you also, in order to get the right leverage, you have to like pull the plank out. Otherwise, it's just not really going to work. It can look up. Can't really. I guess it can look down a bit. And then you can also use the plank for a little bit more range of downward motion. It can rotate 360. But again, because of everything going on here, it's easiest to move the head by pulling the plank up first and then pushing it back down, which is not the best. It's not the best, but it works. The shoulders are tricky. So they can rotate forward only about that far. This arm, at least, the wheel assembly itself is able to rotate a little bit. So you can go up a little bit further. This arm, though, the wheel assembly doesn't seem to want to rotate. so it only goes up that far. So I don't know if that's because there's something wrong. Oh, nope, there it goes. Okay, it was just sticky. So yeah, you can at most rotate the arms forward to about 90, which is not great, and can rotate back to slightly under 90. So yeah, the forward and backward articulation on the shoulders is not the best. And then for the outward motion, it is also limited. Like this is as far out as that arm is going, because it's mashing into the shoulder pad. The shoulder pad can't go out any further, so like that's as far out as the arm can go. Not great. You do get a bicep rotation, or rather a elbow rotation just above the elbow that can go all the way around. The elbow bends to 90 degrees. As you saw during transformation, you get a wrist swivel, but the wrist swivels are so tight on this thing that it kind of have to get the gun out of the way, but you can rotate the wrists. This wrist seems better than the other one. The other one is really tight. And then also when you bring the arm down, the shoulder pad can move a little bit too. So that's a thing that can happen. And another thing you got to be careful of with this guy is when you're moving the arms, especially in and out, it is very easy to disconnect this tab here. It doesn't look like it's got any signs of damage or anything like that, and it is a hook tab, so it does go in pretty solidly, but like when you're trying to wrestle this out, you might pull down a little bit, which then releases the hook and allows it to come out. Which I guess if you wanted to, you could use that as like a outward butterfly motion, but that assembly is not fantastic. You do not get an ab crunch. You can kind of do this, but you don't get an ab crunch with this figure. You do, however, get a waist swivel, which you kind of have to be mindful of the plank back here, but it can go around. It can go all the way around if you want it to. The hips are also not great. I'm going to get the arm kind of out of the way here to show you what I mean. So the hips can only go forward that far because this hip skirt is a fixed piece. So it's not, at least I'm pretty sure it's a fixed. Oh, it's not a fixed piece. I guess it's a fixed piece in the sense that it's both hip skirts together, but okay, well that's good. So you can actually kick forward further. I swear I tried to move that piece before doing this video and it was not moving, but I guess I was just coming at it from the wrong angle. But yeah, so you got 90 degrees forward, almost 90 degrees back, which is surprising given he's got that little butt flap there. And go out to a little bit past 90. You can use the ball joint for the hip as a thigh swivel, but you also get a dedicated thigh swivel, which can go maybe not all the way around, but it goes around enough. I think, it just looked weird if you went around any further than that. Again, you kind of have to be careful of these knee pads, but with the leg kicked forward and use the knee to get a little bit more than 90 degrees. I think because it's a double jointed knee, so you can kind of push it a little bit further, but you kind of have to massage the joints, like the two different joints there. But yeah, you can get a little bit past 90 on the knees. And for the ankles, you get they're ball jointed, but they don't afford you a ton of you can kind of rotate them slightly, but that's all you're getting. They can go forward and back a bit, and they can tilt a bit. And you can also move the toe up if you want to do that, or point the toe, but that's kind of it. So yeah, despite having the feet on ball joints, it doesn't really help with posing at all. So yeah, articulation on this guy exists, but is nowhere near as spectacular as modern Iron Factory articulation, which it stands to reason because this figure is not a modern Iron Factory figure. It's I forget when this came out, but it was definitely well before that. And now for accessories, we can bring this in real quick, and you notice there are these guns on top. And that is really stuck in there. There we go. So we'll leave that off to the side for now, but you can give him the cannons. So he can dual wield the cannons, which looks pretty cool. But the thing I prefer to do, we'll get these out of here, is he also comes with some melee weapons, which do not store in the trailer mode, which is why I didn't give them to him. But it's got a really cool looking axe that has this kind of gunmetal and translucent red thing going on, and I like the sculpt, I like the way it looks, and this can just go into one hand, and then the sword, same deal, except way more red, and again, looks cool. And this can go into the other hand, and you can give him just like 2 melee weapons, or a melee weapon and a gun, or whatever, and it looks cool. Also, if you really want, you can peg these into the arm cannons, because there are 5mm pegs there. So you could do that. I don't think it looks good, but you could do it. And that is going to do it for... we'll leave him the sword, and we'll take the axe. So that's going to do it for the accessories currently. And that is going to do it for the base robot mode for Nightmare Commander. And it's, as I said, it's a cool looking robot. It's Legends scale. It's simpler, older Iron Factory, so I'm not bothered by it, but there are definitely things about the design that I'm like, oof. Makes me wish that Iron Factory would maybe consider doing like a second pass on this idea in the future, get like a refinement. But Legends scale, so there he is with Dinobot and Ova Prime and Samus, so it's, basically Legends scale, though he is a little taller and beefier than well, we'll see. But there is Burnout, and he is smaller than Burnout, because of course he's smaller than Burnout. And now we bring in Core Prime, or Core Nemesis, and yeah, he's way, way noticeably bigger and bulkier than the Core class figure. And then him out of here and bring in the Siege figure, and definitely smaller than Siege, but I kind of feel like proportionally seems bulkier. But I guess that also tracks with the whole War Within design, I don't know. And finally, here he is with the Duck Tank. Okay, now we do stuff and things with this. We're going to bring all of this back in. All of this stuff will just kind of sit down here. Going to take the sword, remove that. Going to remove the cannons. And the cannon piece, it is keyed. There's a slot just above the circular peg section, because there's this little tab thing right above the peg there. So when you peg this in, that keeps this from rotating, which is good because it'll also come in handy later. But yeah, so when you take this off, you're not going to get much from like twisting. You kind of just want to rock back and forth and pull rather than twist. But take that off. I'm going to take off these. And I'm just going to keep them in like a basic kind of pose, but we need to prep this guy for what's to come. So I'm going to bring the arms out just to get him out of the way. This isn't like a transformation step. It's just a clear the road kind of step. I am going to do the PIA thing because I agree with him in that it's a good way to bulk out the midsection, and that I'm going to disassemble this cannon. There's just a little tiny peg hole for both of these, and this piece can just kind of sit down here with everything else, and peg these onto these little pegs on the side here, because this just kind of, it fills in the torso a bit, which I think does look preferable. So do that. Going to curl in the toes, And you also want to kind of, like, you curl them in toes, but you want to tilt them back like that as well, so that they're basically tilted as far back as they can go. And you could, it's up to you whether you keep the knee pads slid up or not. I prefer to keep them slid up, but you can slide them back down if you want. And then finally, well, actually, not quite finally, two things we got to do. First, we got to extend this torso joint again. So you want to pull up, and you'll definitely feel it kind of not quite click, but kind of thunk after you've extended it enough. And with that extended, we can rotate all of this out, flip the head back around 180 degrees, and push everything back in, shove the head down into the torso, and just leave everything like this. And he will just go off to the side. And all this can stay off to the side here. Now we get to do this stuff. So I want to take these entire side sections from the trailer. You just pull straight down and it'll come right off. What happens is there's this big square chunky peg here that pegs into the bottom of this piece right here. That's how that sticks on. It's very easy to get on and off, but just remember, pull down. That's the only bit you got to worry about with how that pegs in. And once these are disconnected, this panel here rotates around, and there is a little tab right here that goes into this notch right here. So flip that around and push it in, and that will tab down and into place. And this piece from this side, just push that down, and then you'll kind of click it in. There we go. And these can sit back here. This piece here, you just kind of rock it back and untab it. It's just these little grooves. These little grooves here, this tabs in here, and this just slides in like that. So you just rock that back to unplug it. Now we can take these pieces here, and you want to untab them from the gray pieces on the sides here. And one side tabs in a lot more securely than the other, but that tabs in right there. And rotate this out. And again, untab this, rotate this out. And with those out of the way, we can rotate these down. And actually we want to do this. So untab this piece from these gray pieces. There's a tab down here that tabs into them, but it's a little bit tricky to, there we go. So there you can see there's the little tab that tabs in there. And once you get one side, it's a lot easier to get the other. And there we go. So there you've got tab and slot and slot. And once this is untabbed, these can swing up to get them out of the way for now. Going to unplug the gauntlets here. There's just these two tabs up here that tab in right here. And then unplug the gauntlets from each other, put them down. And these are pegged in right here, so just give that a little wiggle, pull that out, like so. And if these weren't rotated down yet, rotate them down now. This panel folds down, and we are pretty much done. Just want to take these bits and flip them out, straighten them out. And may as well just rotate these a little bit more forward. So there we go. There we go. There we've got this and all of this and this. There's a little head in there. You want to flip this up, rotate it around 180 degrees, and there we've got the chest plate. And now we bring the core guy back in, and this peg will peg into the side here. It's basically the same peg and port that were attaching the trailer in vehicle mode, but now they're used to attach booties. And that will slide in, and this is why you want to have the foot rocked back, because otherwise it doesn't quite want to fit quite right. So do that. And there is that. We'll get the shoulder pieces in here, and there's just a little square spot on the back of the shoulder, little square tab here, and there's also a small tab on the inside here that tabs into this thing just behind the smokestack. So you just bring this straight down, and that will peg over the shoulder, give you a new shoulder pad. Bring in, oh, we should bring in the waist piece too. This just nestles around his nethers, basically. You just slide that in, and that will grip around his undercarriage and change that up. The panels for the gauntlets, they somewhat weirdly fold in rather than out. For some reason, I always expect them to fold out, but no, they fold in, like towards the inside of the forearm. And there's a little peg on the inside there that just goes into the fist. So you just push that in and peg it in. And then once it's pegged in, you can take this door and close it. And that is it for the new gauntlets. Again, swing that out, bring this in, and make sure it goes in all the way, and then close that up. For this piece, this is why you want to extend this. You want to extend this all the way because this kind of frictions underneath, like this piece goes under here, but there's also this little cutout here that will go around that strut in the center, and that'll help friction all this together. So you want to line that up and just push it back, and it will go in really solidly. The thing that sucks is the I don't know if this is just something I'm doing wrong, or oh, maybe that's what I should be doing. Okay. Just rotate these back and then rotate the shoulders, because when they're rotated the other way, I was noticing that the shoulder pieces were knocking into the tabs for the torso, but this does seem to help. It shifts them back a little bit, but I think that's okay because it lines them up with the head. So yeah, do that, I guess. And we'll just bring the arm down. Bring the arm down. There we go. Okay. We are almost done. As you can tell, we still need to do the backpack. And the backpack is a simple matter of you've got the keyed peg there. It just pegs in the same spot that the cannon used to be. And that pegs over that and gives him his wing pack. And you can also adjust the wings. You can angle them back a little bit, which I like to do. Angle them up a little bit, which I also like to do. And there we've got basic guy, but we still have a little bit more to do. We've got to take these little double cannons that were on the arms, and those peg into the sides of the legs. There we go. And these you can peg onto the back here, which is fine, but I prefer to do, once again, the PA thing. So I'm actually going to use these pegs here and peg holes on either sides of the rifles to peg the rifles into the wings like that to kind of bulk out the wing profile. And of course, if you wanted to, you could just give him the cannons in his hands. This piece, which is now kind of redundant because of the little guns being down at the waist, I just come around to the back and plug it in here just to get out of the way. And that's actually, no, that's still not it, because we've got a little bit more to do, because this guy just has so much stuff. Also, that head just keeps wanting to look slightly up. Want to take the sword and the axe, you can actually combine them. You pull the handle off the sword, and this will peg into the top of the axe. Then slide the axe into the hand, and then take this handle and plug it over the end of the axe, and then you get this like big, nasty halberd sword chopping thing, which looks really cool. And finally, we bring in the last accessory, which was not shown in either mode because this does not have a way to attach in the other robot mode. But there's a little peg here, and it's just pegs onto the back, and obviously it's a cape. It's just it's 3 separate pieces that are just pegged together. Come on, there we go. So you can see this is just pegged into here, and it's the same for this side. And you just want to, once you have them pegged in, you can use this to decide how flared out you want the cape to be. I kind of had it pushed in, but I prefer to flare it out when he's combined. So just flare it out, and I try to line it up so that you don't really get any gaps or any really visible gaps between the pieces. And this peg will peg in right here, and that hinge will allow it to kind of hinge up or down, and this flap can just sit over the back of it. There we go. There is Nightmare Commander in his fully armored up robot mode, and this thing looks really cool. And this is homage number 2, where it's Power Master Optimus Prime, or I guess in this case, what was it? Like with the God armor, I forget the full name of the armored up one, but yeah, this is it's a War Within / Power Master homage in one figure, which I think is really cool. It's unfortunately the articulation on this does, like, it's not that the articulation is worse, it's just that it's more restricted now because you've got such a massive backpack. So, like, you still get the same shoulder, and the arm articulation is the same, except now you don't have wrist swivels because the gauntlets do not have swivels, and the actual bits that do swivel are closed up inside of this rather form-fitting gauntlet. So, like, you can't get the wrist swivels. If you put the guns on the waist here, it does restrict the waist rotation. Not terribly, but it does restrict it a bit. Like, you can see that it does still rotate. It's just that the guns rotate with the waist. The hip rotation in this mode is restricted because this crotch piece does not have flaps on it, so you're not going to be getting the same amount of forward motion. The knees are the same. The foot articulation is actually better because now you get proper ankle tilts. And yeah, it's a little bit strange. It looks really cool, but is also kind of clashy in how everything comes together. You don't get the worst swivels, but you get better ankle tilts, that kind of thing. You do get improved head articulation, or at least improved in the sense that it's easier to reach. So there's that. And you can kind of see the irritation I have with this in that the like one of the 2 parts of that double hinge for that panel on the back is a little bit too loose to hold up the weight of all of this, so it likes to flop back. It only flops back that much, but it's enough to be irritating. So that's something I need to fix at some point in the future. But yeah, here he is all combined up, looking very cool, if a little bit weird. The cape is kind of silly, but I also kind of love it. And yeah, what you can do also if you don't want to do the waist thing is this can go in the hand, and you can have this as like a double barrel blaster that he holds, but I prefer the waist embulkening, so that's where that's going to stay. And yeah, I just there are aspects to this that are a little bit like, as I said, but this does look cool. And I like how you get even more turquoise now, or the light blue rather, because now you've got it in the shoulders and like a couple of places on the forearms and in the shins, more on the little pelvis piece, and so it just makes it almost look like he's glowing. You also get it up here, which I think is really cool. It's like Cyberverse, the second Cyberverse, the series, the cartoon Cyberverse. But well before that show was even conceived, where it just gives that idea of like, it makes it feel like there are a lot of glowing bits on this guy, which is really cool. And in terms of new stuff, I mean, there's a lot of new detailing on this guy. In addition to just the bulky backpack, you've got the guns, which as I said, kind of look cool and are lit up. The chest plate is very old school Power Master, but with like these little guns underneath and like this nice metallic red for the chest, which I know if this is like a proper Nucleon quest or whatever it was called, this Nebulon quest, I think it was Nucleon, whatever, this would be blue, but I kind of feel like that's not what this is trying to homage. Maybe it is, I don't know. But yeah, you've got the nice bulky chest piece, the big beefier feet that do work really, like they integrate really well with the legs. It does make it look like he's got short little thighs, but like you kind of still got that effect in the default robot mode too, so I don't think it's that bad. But like the integration is great, and you get a little bit of silver on the toes there. The gauntlets are really cool. I like the little wings that they added to the sides, and it just adds a little bit more interesting like contouring and molding. Like it just kind of bulks him out, and I like how the shapes that they use for the armor pieces are slightly different in terms of like the patterns and the style, and like the slightly more harsh angles that they use here versus what was being used in the other one, where it just kind of sets the aesthetic apart. So it's like it's still the Iron Factory aesthetic, but it's like War Within versus this, which is more boxy. And this kind of feels like and looks like a completely different figure, even though that same core figure is underneath it all, which I think is really cool. And also fingers for the, or hands with gauntlets picked out, which I think looks really good. So yeah, it's a neat figure that is a little bit tricky to mess with at times, but head looks good. It looks like an even nastier and cooler kind of super roboted out version of the head that we saw before. Definitely different, but like also the same. And now you've got the head crest. The other head did not have the painted head crest, but you've still got the silver faceplate, the red eyes, and of course it looks bulkier with extra little fins for the ears and what could be little cannons on the sides there. It's neat. And the head articulation, as I said, it's the same. It's a ball joint. It's just you can reach it a lot easier now. And yeah, that is it for Nightmare Commander's armored up mode, which again is really cool. And size-wise, it also makes him a fair bit taller. Not super duper tall, but it definitely makes him taller. Like he went from a tall Legends figure to more or less deluxe height. Like, yeah, that's more or less deluxe height, but he's got way more bulk now because that additional 5/8 of plastic that were making up his vehicle mode originally when he had the trailer attached, it's all attached to him now, plus the melee weapon and cape accessories to bulk him out even more. So he's a bit dense. And yeah, height-wise, like to the head, he's basically deluxe height now, which is pretty cool. And bring in Core Nemesis to see just how much bigger he's gotten compared to another small size figure. And we'll bring in Siege Nemesis, who I actually don't have to reposition the camera to show. He is still shorter, but like with the guns, it's close. I feel like it's hard to say. I feel like Siege Nemesis still feels a little bit heavier, but not by much. And at long last, here he is with the duck tank. And that'll do it for Iron Factory Nightmare Commander. This is, as I said, not my favorite Nemesis Prime. He looks really cool. I like, going from the core robot to the armored up mode. I think it's also really nice how smooth and intuitive and kind of smart in its basicness, the way that all of the armor bits compact into the trailer and come out again. Like, it's, even if you forget how it goes, it's not that difficult to just kind of work your way through it, because there's a very clear way that things have to go for things to fit. And I like how all the armor bits compact into this nice, basically trailer box that it might be a little unsightly, but it keeps everything together. It's a nice solid chunk. You don't have to worry about things coming apart. And then it expands and can be added onto the guy to make all this, which is really cool. So yeah, I like the taking the armor apart and like putting it back into the trailer mode and whatnot. I like attaching the armor. I like prepping the core robot for the armor pieces. I like messing around with the core robot itself. I'm just not a big fan of transforming the core robot into the core vehicle mode. And I'm not a fan of how the core vehicle mode looks, even when it has the trailer attached. It's not something that like puts me off with the figure, but it is something that I would consider like probably the weakest aspect of this. But again, this is old school Iron Factory. It has been a while since they've done this kind of, like they've come a long way since whenever it was that this set came out. But I still think it would be cool if they tried something like this again. It wouldn't even necessarily need to be the same exact aesthetic with like the War Within, Power Master, double homage, but like I just feel like this figure, if it had been handled a little differently, probably would have a better looking vehicle mode transformation that's actually interesting and fun to do rather than just kind of like whatever. But that's just one aspect of this set, and the main aspects, like the stuff that I would display this in, whether it's the core robot or the combined mode robot, I think are great. I just, in terms of this stuff, wish that the posability was maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit less parts clashy. Like having to shift the shoulders back to get them out of the way of these tabs kind of sucks. And you can kind of fake it by like disconnecting the arms to bring them out, but I don't like doing that because I feel like that either breaks up the sculpt too much, or if I try and keep it pushed in, the force of this pushing out against the shoulder could put stress on that connection tab. So it's a lot of stuff that, as I said, it's very early days, and I feel like now would not be as much of an issue because they would have refined it. But still, cool set, glad to have it. Wish it was slightly better in some areas, but still happy with it overall. So that's more than enough about what I think. What do you all think of Iron Factory Nightmare Commander here? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and sticking with me for an entire month of Nemesis Primes. And I am not entirely sure what the next video is going to be, because I've already filmed videos outside of Nemesis Primes, so that as we go into October, we'll have more stuff to look at. But as of this recording, it is September, but September is far from over, and I have one more Nemesis that's currently in the mail, but it's coming from overseas. So if that Nemesis shows up before the month gets too long in the tooth, then I have time to do a video on it before NemeSeptember is over, then that will be the final Nemesis video of this year. If not, if it takes too long to get here or whatever, then I am undecided if I'm going to save it for next year or just do a video on it separately. We shall see. Fingers crossed it gets here on time, though. But anyway, whether it's that video or one I already have recorded, I will see you in the next one.